I did actually I have the whole pack in my pocket.
Were they social distancing the crowd?
Not really. Not really. Forget about it. I actually got yelled at for wearing the mask. They didn't yell at me directly, but they were walking past and it was like, there's nothing in the air. I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess.
So it is being recorded and we are live streaming to Facebook just in case.
Perfect.
So that's fine.
So it's important that you wear your mask, even if you get yelled at, just, stick with it.
Exactly. I'm glad you wore it.
Let's
And
get
then
started
let
with the
anyone try to intimidate you not to.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
You're right.
All right, let's get started. Caucus for the Monday, May 4th, prior to our meeting. On the agenda, we have minutes for the 4/20 minutes for passage. Just popping back up to the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we just choose a member to say the pledge?
Sure.
Mr. President, because we're kind of, that was horrible that last time we all did the pledge. So
I know.
Let's
So what do you want to do?
Just pick a member.
Just have a member?
Pick the member and they can say the pledge. We'll all stand by.
Okay.
All right, sound good? Okay.
You can do that.
Okay, that's fine.
President Pro Tem, yep. I will do that, no problem.
All right, on to local laws introduced. Ms. Frederick, local law F. You want to say something quick about that, or are we good?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that'll be going to finance. All right, on to local laws held. Down to number 3 on the agenda, local law E, Mr. Conti's. That'll be a pass, or we'll be voting on that. Did you want to say anything, Richard? No?
If anyone has any questions, otherwise.
No?
And local law, I'm sorry, local law F is Ms. Farrell.
Excuse me?
No.
No, Frederick.
Thank you. I lost my notes from last week, so.
Yeah, that's local law F of 2020, because there's also a local law F of 2019.
2019.
So Sonia's is F of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. We're in the agenda. The rest of the ordinances are held. Resolutions introduced. Mr. Anane, 375120. Quick word, or are you good?
What's that?
Okay. Be voting on that. The second one, Mr. Anane, 385120. The COVID-19 assistance. It's referred to, well, we're going to be discussing it in housing and community development. We're going to be passing it. Okay. So it'll be passed for that one. Next 3, 3951 20, 40, 5120, and 41. 5120 will be by me.
Hello.
What did you say?
Can I ask a question about the COVID-19 rental assistance? I'm a little confused. Is that, my understanding was that is a pass, but we will be
We are having
other. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes.
Discussing the actual funding for everything in a committee meeting, but this is still a pass for tonight, right?
Yes, that's what I said. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, people are breaking up for some reason.
Am I?
It's not just you, it's Judy too. I don't know, but go ahead.
Okay. All right. So on to the ordinances for the marriage officer. It's 395120, 405120, and 415120 by me. They'll be passes. Okay. Next up, we will have 2 MCs. We'll add by majority consent. Ms. Doeschate's 425120. Judy, you want to speak on that?
Well, I spoke at it at the last council. I think it's kind of self-explanatory now that I've spelled it out. It includes, concerns about food scarcity, about the equitable distribution of food, about not wasting food, considering what we're going through, and also the protection of workers to make sure that they are provided with the opportunity for appropriate social distancing and protective equipment necessary to keep them safe. And that is everybody up and down the food production, harvesting, planting to delivery and point of sale line. Everybody should be protected, be provided with adequate testing and also healthcare services. If anybody has any questions about that, let me know.
Thank you, Judy. Next MC will be by Mr. Balarin. It's 435120R. Mr. Balarin, quick word.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm unmuted. Thank you for allowing me to present this resolution. This resolution is supporting the proposal to have hazard pay for essential. Basically, it's to give those essential workers that are currently day in and day out on the front lines fighting this virus and keeping us safe and doing the hard work to make lights on, our water flowing, keep us safe, dealing with all the healthcare issues and so forth. Making sure that we just say thank you and a pat on the back. This is something that is proposed at the federal level, and I think it's a good way for us to put our stamp that we support this. We support our essential workers, all from those who are at the hospitals, the doctors, nurses, the fire, police, the grocery, the truck drivers, those who are working to keep the water flowing, picking up the trash, and so forth. Those are the individuals that, like I said, deserve a lot more than a thank you and a pat on the back. And I hope to get all of your support on this, your response on this, and hopefully we can send a strong message to our federal leaders. This is something we should move forward with.
Thank you, Mr. Balarin. For these group of resolutions, everyone want to be co-sponsors on both Judy's, Alfredo's, and Mr. Anane's?
Yes.
Yeah, anyone not want to be? Okay, we're all co-sponsors.
Does anybody know why I would be upside down on this laptop?
I just noticed that.
Joe, you're just showing off about how acrobatic you are to do a council meeting upside down. We're all
I can't help with that. How you would be upside down.
Woo, that's a good one.
So the command is video. Go
Let
into
me see
the
if I can
video
turn my
settings.
laptop upside down.
No.
Ah,
Tom, how did you?
Yeah,
How did you-
you go into video settings. Go over to the video camera. There's an up arrow. You click it, and you'll see video settings. You click on that, and there's a thing there that says rotate up in the top corner 90 degrees.
Let's see. But I got you. I got you.
Did you find the up arrow next to the video camera?
I'm not even on there now, am I?
Yeah, you are. We're looking at you upside down.
Am I still upside down?
You're still upside down. Did you go into the video settings?
I thought I did.
On the bottom of the screen,
Yeah.
you highlight it and you'll see a little microphone and then the camera, and there's a little up arrow next to the camera. You click on that, and then you'll get the settings, and up on the top right-hand corner, there's a thing that says rotate 90 degrees. Highlight it, you'll see a little microphone, and then
Yeah, I got the little microphone. Go ahead, guys. I don't know.
Joe, I'm gonna text you a picture of what you should be looking at.
I see a microphone. I see stop video. I see everything, but
yeah, next to stop video, there's a little up arrow. It looks like that. You click on that, and it'll open up.
yeah, it says video settings, USB camera.
Yeah, now look at the screen where your face is. It says on the right-hand side, rotate 90 degrees. Just click on that.
It's like on your picture, Joe.
My picture's not up there. That's my problem.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll see you in a while on my phone. Or I'll just listen to you for now.
Well, you could be upside down. There's no law.
Yeah. At that point, we'll all go
Okay.
upside down in solidarity.
I'm gonna play with this. Don't let me bother
Okay.
you.
Go ahead.
All right, so that was it for the agenda.
Mr. President, just one thing. The veto, since it'll be probably considered by this body, has to be not discussed, but it'll be introduced right before consideration of ordinances. It's right after local laws per the agenda.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, you know what?
I see it.
And Mr. President Ellis, do you want the city clerk to read it in its entirety or just notice it?
Since she's got to read the ordinance. We'll just read the ordinance for the record. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the veto message.
Oh, the veto? No.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to. For the
Just
record,
recognize
read
it
the
for,
whole-
and then,
Yeah.
okay.
And we have, what is it, 30 days to act on that?
After today, once it's in the record officially, then we have the 30-day clock starts, yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you, JR.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Kelly?
So we're done with the agenda. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, just a couple of questions on procedure regarding the veto message and the subsequent vote. I am assuming that you will not want to move for a vote tonight?
No.
Okay. And then I assume, do we need to put a memorandum or answer the message or not? I'm not aware that we have to.
No.
Okay. But we can obviously, will we have that discussion on it tonight, or will that also go to the 18th?
We could have a discussion.
And
Wouldn't that be more of a caucus?
Yeah, since you're not voting
You
on
wanna-
it tonight. You
On our
make
Wednesday
more-
caucus, you want to discuss it further?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then obviously when it comes up for a vote, yes, you can discuss it when it comes up for a vote.
Okay. Okay. And then can I raise the issue of the FOIL request for everybody's emails? Is that appropriate?
Go ahead.
to
It's
raise?
caucus, brother. Yeah, go ahead. That's appropriate.
Okay. My understanding of the public officers law and FOIL is that it's not set up for these massive fishing expeditions. I mean, this guy's looking at probably 100,000 emails because he even goes back.
Mike, can you back up and say what you're talking about? Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you should have got your emails are being requested. Every council member who may have gotten an email from Zach Simpson, even in the previous council, there's a FOIL request for those emails. And then all FOIL requests for my emails.
When was this submitted?
About last week.
Last week. But JR, you
sent
sent
an
an
email
email
about it
out to the members today.
Really? Okay, because I didn't know it was for every council member.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, JR, in your email today, JR has noticed everybody.
Yeah. So I guess the guy. So I guess my question on guidance is, since it goes back for 3.5 years, that potentially is tens of thousands of emails. Do we really have to spend our time, since we don't know what they're looking for? They didn't say, but it seems to me like it's not the intent of the open meetings law to allow, such a broad, for whatever purpose, such a broad sweeping request. I mean, it would take hours, literally. Everybody will have to spend hours going back and looking at emails.
I just have a question. Can everybody hear me?
Sure.
Since we are and this thing is active with the attorneys from the blood plasma place, shouldn't we be discussing these type of items in executive session? Since
can we go into executive session? Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
And anything just having to do with this case further should be in executive session, just so we keep things.
Yes, I agree with you. Maybe next Wednesday night.
Well, we have no litigation.
Our next call.
We have no
litigation. It's just, I don't know that a FOIL request would qualify.
No, I think you got to be careful there too, because there's a fine line between talking about the ordinance and consideration of the ordinance and the veto, and talking about litigation.
And furthermore, the FOIL laws does not take into consideration if the person is a litigant in a case. Anybody can request these records.
Yeah, there's no need to go in executive session. We're not talking about a lawsuit or anything. I don't care if it's on the record. I think it should be on the record. Anything that's not legal, we don't need to go executive session for that.
But I would assume, at least and I don't have the public officers law in front of me, but certainly it was not intended to be a fishing expedition, particularly if it's going to take such an inordinate amount of time. It isn't like it's a record that's right there, a compilation that's right there that we can push a few buttons and get. It's like it's going to take massive hours of everybody's time to go through looking for a particular sender and not really knowing the subject matter, whatever. I mean, it could be any kind of a note that you would have a normal expectation of privacy of. So I guess we need some guidance before we would spend a lot of time plowing through 3.5-year-old emails.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some limits to FOIL that I don't believe that if you were emailing with Zach about a pie recipe, for example, I do not believe that is under FOIL. So perhaps, JR, if you can send out some limits to what actually fall under FOIL. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is that I don't believe that they're doing this to strengthen their lawsuit. I believe, and this is my own personal opinion, I just want to qualify that, that they're doing this as something against us. And I also think it shows that absolutely they're in it for the money, because if they have that amount of time, that amount of money for that amount of billable hours, it once again shows that they are not interested in our citizens. They're interested in the money they can make off of them. And it's just another example. So if they can read all my emails, I'm going to share all of them. But I understand that not everybody would want to go through all that.
Can I just say one other thing? I've only got a few emails with Zach. More recently about a neighborhood association that he's neighborhood watch that he's looking to get started, and I got one started a couple years in my neighborhood.
I would caution council members about the contents of their email at this time.
I guess that was my question. What is the content that they're looking for? Is it?
That's right.
Yes,
it's
still something that we're going through in research. FOIL law is very particular, and it's also expansive as well. I can definitely send up more follow-up, because myself and Michelle are still trying to figure out how to do this ourselves to make sure we can comply on this. Yep, go ahead, Danielle.
When they make this type of request and they don't put a specific content, I can reach out to them and ask them for more specificity so that you can provide targeted emails. That's something that it's okay for us to do, and we've done in the past when it's been very broad requests.
Okay.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, myself and others were elected and took office in 18. Request for 17. I'm not sorry. I wasn't a public official at then, and that's my private email. My private email.
Yeah, no.
The other thing, I did do some searches, and I got hundreds of emails. So you can't mass send a whole bunch of emails. You got to do them one at a time. And then there's mails that Zach is in with the neighborhood association that I was on a mailing list, and there's hundreds of people on the mailing list. Do I have to share that information? Who else is on these emails? Because it doesn't seem right to me that whoever I sent this email to.
Like you can redact all of the other people that are part of the distribution list, so you just see Zach Simpson. And there's a redaction tool in the GovQA, which is the web-based system that we use to respond to FOIL requests. So
okay.
Okay,
How
so
it's worth the work though, and I just don't know.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Jobs and it's going to be really tough for a lot of us. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Okay, Judy and then Kathy. Judy and then Kathy.
So I am, I'm not seeing, offhand, I'm not seeing, I finally found the request. I'm not seeing whether they're requesting this electronically or can I print them out?
Or you could print them out.
So that's the first question. The second thing is there's 15 or so exemptions under FOIL. So things like materials prepared for litigation, things that are an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy, contract negotiations. So there's like I said, there's about 15 exemptions. And when I work for the Department of Health, usually what you would do is you would find all your emails and then send the request to somebody like a counsel to review which ones might fit within the exemption. That seems like it would be unduly burdensome on JR. But I'm just noting that that it's not like just, every email from Zach Simpson. No, then there's this evaluation.
The thing of the matter, Councilwoman, is just that a lot of records are subject to public records. Whether they are disclosable is a separate issue. They're two different issues. I will definitely follow up with everyone on it. Regarding it, because it was to send out the email was really just to put everybody on notice. More information is coming out on it.
But
So the other thing I want to mention is the Freedom of Information Law, I think, gives us like either 5 or 7 business days to respond. But that response is then when to acknowledge the request and let them know that you're going to be taking additional time given the
Can we hold this discussion till Wednesday?
Yeah, we'll just hold it for caucus.
But
next caucus.
I want to bring up another important issue.
Michael Bryan's love title.
I'm sorry, the mayor's press release went out today about the revenue shortfall and potential for layoffs and salary decreases, et cetera. So I don't know if any of you, people are already starting to reach out about this and be quite nervous about it. A couple of things I want to know, has the Finance Committee been scheduled? And I'd also like to suggest that maybe we should consider writing a letter to our federal electeds to encourage them to help local governments out here because of this incredible shortfall.
I thought we did.
I think Tom, we did that.
We did that.
We did that already.
We did that last week.
Oh,
I'm currently looking at Thursday, the 14th. I'm waiting on
Okay.
responses from Joyce, Alfredo, Mike, and Jamel as far as availability for the finance meeting.
You didn't get my email? I can do it the 14th.
You good? Okay.
I can do the 14th.
Okay.
I can do it. So, I think that everybody saw what was in there. I did want to potentially provide a brief update if people were interested in what was discussed with leadership. We are short on time, so it'll be quick, but as everyone saw, there's a decrease in revenue directly related to COVID, and that is separate from the increased costs. So the masks, the deep cleaning, they're two very different things. The fortunate thing about the increased cost, which is about $1.5 million, is that is all reimbursable from FEMA. The budget office has been tracking that very extensively, and there's a lot of confidence on the side of the mayor's office to be able to get those reimbursements, which is great. The revenue hit is about $18 million, as you saw in the press release. It's between 17 and 20. What the mayor's office has done, what the budget office has done, is gone through every single department, every single line to review budget, to see exactly where the lost revenue will be, because obviously it will vary dramatically by department where you'll see those pieces. They are expecting, they assumed in their projections a 20% reduction in the capital city funding and in the aid for municipality funding. They are not expecting any reductions in the 19A, which is the money that we get for the Empire State Plaza. And the reason for that is that's statutory. They're also assuming a 20% reduction in sales tax revenue, but that again, all of these are just guesses. There was a question about, Judy had a question about looking at some potential things in terms of layoffs, and the mayor's office is looking at function and really trying to do things there. There will likely be layoffs. There is that expectation, but as they work through the departments, they're also looking to see who it makes the most sense to lay off in terms of potential needs for the city and for our residents. Just quickly, there was a question about the golf course. And to let everyone know, right now the mayor's office is looking at the golf course usually loses money. Again, we talked about that. It usually breaks in with a slight loss. She can't justify putting our workers at risk being in that situation for golf. There are other places to play golf outside the area, so golfers do have other places that they can play golf, and there's a lot of other great ways to get outside. So we look forward to everything being open for everyone, but that's not on the table right now.
Jenny?
Yes.
Kelly, we mentioned the golf course, okay? They still have to maintain it. Because around, I think it was 1967, when the union first started, they went on strike. The grass grew 2 feet high, and they had to bring in farmers to do it. They never caught up for years.
I don't know that they're talking about not maintaining any park. I think that there's a difference between park maintenance, though, and golf cart.
I'm saying it's still an expense, so
yeah,
they offset it.
So one of the things that we discussed quickly was the franchise agreement. And what would be really helpful is the mayor's office and the corporation council is very interested if the council could put together a document to kind of say what we would like in that agreement. So this is just putting feelers out there for if you are interested in participating and putting that together or leading that charge, please let Kelly or I know.
Are we talking about a renewal of not a renewal necessarily, but a long-term agreement, like the current one is 10 years? Are we talking about an extension of the existing one for another year, which is something that has been done in the past also?
I think that this would be for a longer term one. For the extension for a year, obviously you wouldn't need that much information.
No, that was for.
Can we get the previous agreement sent to all council members?
So no, what I'd like to do is get together a group of people that want to work on it, and then they can get all the back information that they would like from it.
Yep. Of course, we're starting late in the process because we should have been way further ahead than where we are right now. But
No, that was an agreement for what? I'm sorry.
The franchise agreement for
previously with Time Warner.
Yeah, it was Spectrum.
Jenny, one of the things the mayor's press release said was that some of the reductions were going to happen as early as this week. Did you get a sense of what areas those are?
So the one piece that she mentioned was the crossing guards.
Crossing guards.
Since school will definitely not be in session anymore, they had been paying crossing guards to this point. But since there won't be school for the rest of the school year, that is, they're anticipating that happening.
Those are one of our most vulnerable employees. Those are
also
most,
but
they're not high income employees. We're talking about, those are like a $13, $14 an hour.
They're not, Alfredo, first of all, it's not a full-time job.
I understand, but those are individuals that depend on that income.
And we have an $18 million deficit. Every single
But are those
job
people
that
eligible for at least even unemployment or any of those other benefits?
It's likely that they have another
I believe
job.
so.
Yes.
What about those
it
who
would be.
don't? I mean, there are many who don't. That's what they depend on.
Alfredo, unfortunately, we can't employ people.
There's going to be
if
a
there's
lot
no
of
work.
increases.
Thank
When you have an $18 million deficit, I can tell you, when I was on the school board, we always dealt with deficits. It's
Why are we starting with the most vulnerable? Is my question.
No,
we're starting with what is easiest for residents.
Okay. We'll have time for.
Kelly, I have a quick question.
Deeper
Not
discussion. Hold on. Mr. Johnson's been waiting to speak.
So, thank you. I wanted to raise a question about committee meetings. I think that we need to have a public safety committee meeting with the rash of shootings that's been going on, the violence, and then also a general services meeting with some of the concerns that are being brought to our attention, just to have some follow-up to get clear answers to questions, so that in this time where we're talking about budget cuts and layoffs, people are being mistreated when it wasn't budget cuts or layoffs. And, if ever they need to know that they have a voice and they have some support, I think that this is a teachable moment to everybody that we support our workers. So I think that that's much needed.
Yes, it's 7:05 people, so we want to start our meeting. But to Mr. Johnson's point, Kelly, I think you said you're going to schedule a DGS commission.
Public safety, yeah.
Sorry.
We have to start the meeting soon.
Yes, we do.
All the meetings at 7:20, 7:15. Everybody just relax. I mean, people are going to see us have a meeting. Like, if people have questions, let them ask their questions. I just think that.
No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
There's been several times we have started meetings. If someone have a question they would like to ask, that would be great. Just let them ask it. Alfredo's talking.
Doesn't work that way, sir. We're going to start the meeting.
You ready to
start the meeting now? Things can be discussed in caucus. That's what caucuses are for. So we have many times discussed this. You don't have to just discuss it here. You can pick up the phone, talk to council leadership. It does not have to be now. So with that being said, we're going to start our Monday, May 4th, 2020 common council meeting. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, President.
Thank you.
Anane.
Present.
Balarin.
Present.
So he is.
Shh, Max.
Nanci. Doesschate.
Here.
I'm here too.
Fahey.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Flynn,
Here.
Frederick,
Here.
Hoey,
Here.
Igo,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kimbrough,
Here.
Love,
Here.
O'Brien,
Here.
Robinson.
Present.
15 members present, 0 absent.
Thank you. And Council Member Mr. Kimbrough will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in our moment of silence. Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to our public comment period. The clerk, do we have public comments?
Yes, I do. I'm going to get those public comments up momentarily.
Okay.
And we also have 2 members from the public that are in our waiting room that wish to make their public comments live.
Okay. Just bring them on. Yep, thank you.
The first public comment is from Christopher. First public comment is from Christopher, 26 Marinello Terrace. And Christopher shares that why is even odd street parking being enforced for street cleaning? There's no one outside, so I don't understand why street cleaning has to be so frequent. The financial burden of the tickets on us residents to pay these tickets is unreasonable during these times. Furthermore, some of us are working from home as well as taking care of young children and cannot move our car. Most times there are no parking spots available. I would like to know how regular street cleaning is not an undue burden on residents during the shelter in place. The next comment is from Juliet Turner of 5 Tudor Road. I am writing to urge the Common Council to support the amendments to the USDO Section 375 as proposed by Tom Hoey, council member for the 15th Ward. The changes by Mr. Hoey were recognized some time ago as being necessary, but for some reason there has been a delay in getting them enacted. It is important that the planning board cannot issue waivers to the USDO unless the Common Council consents. Otherwise, the planning board can waive requirements that it has itself imposed, which makes no logical sense and certainly does not contribute to unbiased decisions. And no building department permits can be issued until all required actions by any federal, state, or city department are satisfied. This requirement should be given to avoid any possibility of permits being issued before required conditions set by the above departments are fulfilled, which could lead to omissions in planned projects, issues to dangerous omissions. We need clarity and transparency in the regulations guiding the planning process to enable all those involved to work together to ensure that Albany grows in a fitting manner. Clear guidelines will enable this approach. Please take positive action here and approve Councilman Hoey's amendment. Next comment is from Vincent Raguso, and he's also in the waiting room. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I believe JR is admitting him.
Hello, Mr. Raguso, are you there?
Oh, they just went on. Okay, I'm sorry. They just come on.
Yes, we can
just
hear
going
you.
to ask you. Okay.
Mr. Raguso?
Hi, Mr.
Can you hear me?
Well, I want to see what she's going to do with mine. If she asks me to read it, I'll be happy to. I got a
I don't
microphone.
know if you can hear us.
Or I'll call in and see if I can get a phone call. Okay? I'll say you bye.
Hello, Mr. Raguso?
I can call him and tell him to just start talking if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can somebody just text Vince?
Sure.
Can I read that?
You can do whatever you like, Mr. Raguso. You have 5 minutes, like normal public comment period.
Thank you very much. As a resident of the city of Albany, I'd like the entire council to support Tom Hoey's amendment to the USDO. This change is not only for the 15th ward, but for the entire city. As the council stands now, the only thing the citizens need the council for are to pass serial bonds. You have no strength only at the planning department level. They took all the power from the 15th wards when the council passed the USDO. With that passage, the planning board became the supreme ruler. After the USDO was accepted by the council was to have a 6-month review, which never happened. The board is the appointed body, and who controls the board? The Common Council represents 98,000 citizens in Albany, which means that each ward represents 7,500 residents. The planning board, 5 people, represent 98,000 because the council does not have any power pertaining to the application to the planning board pertaining to projects in their ward or the city. You get what they tell you. If you have a problem with that, they say you need permission from them to change the problem. No one in their right mind is going to give up that power. To tell you how powerful the planning department is, numerous times the commission has been invited to address the council's questions. He never showed. Tell me, is this a slap in the face to the council? As we listen to Tom Hoey's amendment, he is trying to change the USDO just a little to maybe where the council will have a little more power. So again, I ask you, please vote for Tom Hoey's changes to the USDO. And I want to thank the council for listening to me. I appreciate it, and hopefully you will help Tom Hoey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raguso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
The next comment was submitted by Elizabeth Berberian, and she writes to the Common Council. My name is Elizabeth Berberian. I'm a 39-year-old resident of Albany. I live at 25 Clarendon Road in Albany. I'm writing in strong support of Tom Hoey's proposed legislation, which would, 1, prevent the planning board from issuing waivers to the USDO without consent by the Common Council. 2, prevent a building department permit from being issued until all actions by any federal, state, or city department is satisfied. This prevents a loophole of the planning board being able to bypass such regulation. This legislation will ensure checks and balances on the approval of new building projects within the city. These actions are critical, as we know only too well in the Eagle Hills neighborhood. We have witnessed firsthand a situation where the planning board approved a massive project without those checks and balances. The construction of an apartment building at 1211 Western Avenue was rubber stamped for approval by the planning board without addressing such major issues as the need to bury power lines and ensure access for emergency vehicles. The planning board did not address those or a myriad of additional legitimate issues raised by professional experts in approving this project. I was stunned by the planning board's lack of thoroughness and unwillingness to address significant issues related to this project. As an eyewitness to this action, I am stunned by the lack of expertise and respect, bordering on disdain for city residents, many of whom had legal and engineering expertise displayed by the planning board. It is imperative that this legislation be passed to ensure that the planning board does not have undue influence beyond its scope of power or expertise or the law when considering the approval of new construction projects. The planning board clearly is overstepping its bounds. I applaud and concur with the absolute necessity of Mr. Hoey's critical legislation, which will give the Common Council and the City Building Department the ability to ensure that projects are thoroughly assessed prior to their approval by the planning board. I urge you to support this legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person is Nanci L. Cremen, who just provided, I support Tom Hoey's legislation. We also have a comment submitted by Katina Malvadinez. She said she may come to speak and share her comment in person. I do not see her in the waiting room. Her comment reads as follows. I'm speaking to you in support of ordinance number 158119. As you well know, in the United States, there has been a place of systems of checks and balances since the adoption of the U.S. Constitution in 1783. This ordinance reinforces this critical principle, albeit on a local level, by removing the waiver provision in the USDO. With this revision to the USDO, there can be the correct legislative oversight of an unelected body. In addition, there needs to be no issuance of any building and/or demolition permit while the governor's executive order 202.1 is in place. NY pause means New York State on pause, not skirt the law. The next comment is Stephen Burke, and I believe he is in the waiting room and ready to speak. Mr. Burke, are you here?
He's actually already in the room, but his mic is not connected.
So we'll try and get Mr. Burke, and I can move on to the next comment, Mr. President, if that's your way.
Go ahead. Yep. Please do.
The next comment was submitted by Keith Reynolds. For Tudor Road, I am in favor of the following amendment. BTA number 0013 application. Council member Thomas Hoey, 11th Ward, relevant sections, and he references sections of the USDO 375-5E14. And zoning text amendment proposal, and then he reiterates the proposal amendment to the Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance to repeal 375-5E14 and amend 375-5E1C and 375-5E17 to remove the ability of the planning board to grant waivers, require the chief building official to enforce all relevant city, county, state, and federal requirements, and remove the ability of the chief planning official or chief building official from waiving or altering conditions placed by all relevant city, county, state, and federal entities. Do we have Mr. Burke's mic working, or should I proceed?
His mic is still not connecting.
Is it on our end, do you believe, or we don't know?
It's on his end because I'm not even getting a feed that he's connected to audio.
Okay, so proceed.
Let's see. He is the last one, I believe, for public comment.
Okay.
I see him.
And later on down the agenda, if he does come through, we'll put him on at the end of the agenda if he comes through for public comment.
He's online.
His audio is still not working though.
Oh, okay.
So that is all that I have for public comment. So I guess we'll visit Mr. Burke.
Yep. If he gets on later, we can push him down to the additional public comment period down on the agenda. Thank you for that. Now we're moving to approval of minutes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, motion to approve the April 20th of 20 meeting minutes.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes approved. Now moving on to local laws. Ms. Fredericks, introduction of local laws. Ms. Fredericks.
Mr. President, I noticed local law F of 2020 and ask for its introduction.
Thank you so much. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Article 16 of Chapter 333 of the Code of the City of Albany.
Mr. Kimbrough?
It's referred to finance.
Thank you, sir. Continuing on with local laws held, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice local law E of 2020 request passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Part 1 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to enacting a new Chapter 35 to be entitled Appointees to Public Bodies, Removal from Office.
Is there any discussion on the local law? Seeing those hands raised, can the clerk please call the roll?
Bear with us 1 second, Mr. President, while we unmute all members.
Yep.
Everyone's unmuted.
Anane.
Yes.
Balarin.
Yes.
Conti.
Yes.
Juliet.
Yes.
Fahey.
Yes.
Barrow.
Yes.
Flynn.
Yes.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Igo.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Kimbrough.
Yes.
Love.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
15 in the affirmative.
Local law passes. Madam Clerk, can you please read into, for the record, consideration of the veto? Just the title, not the whole language. Thank you.
Says veto of ordinance 33120 amended is a correspondence from the mayor's office dated April 30th of 2020, indicating why she has returned that veto 33120 unsigned and will not sign it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Continue on.
Quick question. Point of clarification, can I ask a question, Mr. President?
That's audible. No, sir, that's out of order. We're moving on to Mr. Kimbrough. Sorry, Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes. Holding the rest of the local laws are held. What are we?
Okay, thank you. That's what.
We're on.
And also.
Ordinances are held. Also.
Yep.
Okay. Resolutions.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to resolutions introduced. Mr. Anane.
Yes, just for point of clarification, Council President, I just want to know, just moving forward. I get it, maybe I can't ask a question, but can I make a motion after a veto message? Just for my own knowledge, I just want to know, just for point of clarification.
Point of clarification on reading the motion into.
What I'm saying is that once the executive makes a motion to veto and it comes back to us, can I make a motion, let's say, for example, to vote on it right now, to override the veto right now? Can I make that motion? Do we have to take a vote? Just to find my understanding.
No.
John Raphael?
No, it's the sponsor. It's according to past practice, it's the sponsor who moves
Sponsor who has to.
Okay, so
and Mr. Anane, these are the questions you are proposed during caucus when we were discussing this
I wanted to ask that question. I wanted to ask that question, but I was rushed. That's the question I wanted to ask. And I believe the sponsor also wants to make that motion. Jesus Christ.
Resolution.
So Mr. Anane, resolutions introduced.
Someone has their hands up.
No, they don't.
Did we skip over reports of standing committees?
Oh, sorry, yes.
That was my question.
We did skip over that.
Yes. Housing and development, I think they're.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I want to notice that we are in the process of scheduling a meeting for next Monday at 5:30. And Michelle is confirming the availability of Ms. Andrews to be able to talk about the additional CARES funding that is available to the city and potential ways in which that money may be spent. A survey has been conducted, and there has been some community input and opportunity for council members to provide input. But I thought it would be helpful to have an in-person conversation with members of the council to see if we could do a little bit of brainstorming and help provide that guidance. So that is potentially likely for next Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Any more for standing committees?
Council Operations.
Go ahead, Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council Operations Committee met on April 27 to consider local law E of 2020, which we just passed, but did report it out with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Finance meeting that is, I believe we just nailed it down during caucus to Thursday, May 14th at 5 p.m. We will be discussing local law F of 2020, ordinance number 4.41.20, ordinance 5.41.20, and resolution 29.41.20. And we're also going to have just a more in-depth discussion of what's happening in our current fiscal climate. I asked the head of budget to come in and kind of walk us through a lot of the different things. Even though they're different terms that have been discussed a great deal, I think it's helpful, especially for members in the first term, to have a refresher on what some of these different pieces are, so that as these different pieces of information come at us, because they will come at us quickly, we can have a basic understanding of them.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Any others? Because I can't see anybody's hands, so. Okay, moving on to resolutions introduced. Mr. Anane.
His mic.
Yeah, mute.
Hello?
We can hear you now.
Good. Thank you. I noticed resolution 375120R and ask for its passage on a roll call vote.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council proclaiming May 2020 as Bike Month in the city of Albany.
Is there any discussion on the resolution?
Yes.
I just
Anane. I can't hear anybody. Something happened. Mr. Anane?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-oh.
This resolution is to encourage
Hold on, I'm gonna mute everybody and then I'll mute you, Mr. Anane.
Thank you.
There you go, Mr. Anane.
This resolution is to encourage residents to utilize bike as a mode of transportation, cut down on vehicle emission, and bolster the use of bike-friendly road network. Bicycling has grown to become an increasingly popular form of commuting and recreation, as growing numbers of people recognize the health benefits, affordability, and environmental friendliness of this form of transportation. The city has work to be done to become completely bike-friendly and accessible, but this is one small effort to draw attention to the issue. Supporting this resolution would demonstrate our city's commitment to work in partnership with state, local biking advocacy groups to continue building upon Albany's biking infrastructure, such as the Madison Avenue bike lanes. and to promote the use of this healthy, reliable, and sustainable mode of transportation among city residents and those who commute to travel to the city of Albany. Last year, working with community organizations such as Capital Roots, among others, made efforts in a way to donating and installing bike racks across our city. I want to applaud the mayor on making Albany a more bicycle-friendly city, and I want to thank all my colleagues for co-sponsoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anane. And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Anane,
Yes.
Balarin,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Doesschate,
Yes, I believe we're all co-sponsors.
Yes.
I think so.
Voice vote.
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Frederick,
Yes.
Bowie,
Yes.
Igo,
Yes.
Jefferson,
Yes.
Kimbrough,
Yes.
Love,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
15 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Anane.
5120R and asks for its introduction and passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Yes, a resolution for COVID-19 rental assistance.
Is there any discussion on the resolution? Mr. Anane? I can't see anything, so.
Thank you. Represent a ward where the vast majority of residents rent apartments. I hear all too often the challenges of constituents struggling to make ends meet. This present crisis makes that challenge even significantly harder. It is a challenge both for young constituents and older constituents face, which must be addressed. Almost overnight, millions of jobs around the country are gone. And through no fault of employers themselves, yet for many people, the rent is still due. How does one pay for rent without any income? And I know there's a halt on evictions, but that doesn't mean that the landlords have stopped collecting rent. So let's look at the facts. According to a study conducted by the Fiscal Policy Institute in 2019, nearly 50% of households who rent in the city of Albany are cost burdened. What does cost burden means? It means that 50% of households are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. 30% of their income towards rent. And I'm going to repeat that again. Nearly 50% of households who rent in the city of Albany are cost burdened. It means that 50% of our households are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. Not to mention, data from the US Census Bureau that was analyzed by the Neighborhood Preservation Coalition of New York State in 2019 indicates the city of Albany has lost thousands of affordable rentals over the past 10 years. This is where we must step in as government officials. The CARES Act, which was instituted by the federal government, passed through Congress and the Senate, and signed into law by the president, provided our city with over $1 million in additional funds to deal with the impact of this virus. Let's use a portion of that money to help the renters impacted by this pandemic. That's what this legislation calls for. It's not fair that at the end of the day, at the end of this crisis, tenants are expected to pay for outstanding payments that they built up while being unemployed or furloughed. If we have the resources to address this issue for Albany residents, then we should address it. On a personal note, I know what it's like to be evicted. You know, my freshman year college, sophomore year college, we had several instances of eviction proceedings because a roommate wasn't able to pay for their rent. And when that happened, it's humiliating. It's also a public health concern. And many of the residents in the city of Albany are going to experience that come June 20th, when that eviction moratorium has been lifted. And as elected officials, we have to make sure that everyone is protected, everyone is safe. When I decided to make a decision to call on the mayor and also the sheriff's office to halt evictions, during that week, I found out that in the city of Albany, there were 375 scheduled evictions. 375 scheduled evictions. And now that many have lost their jobs through this pandemic, there are going to be more evictions that are going to take place. And I get it. We are in a we're not in a financially right place to alleviate it. But if the money do come from the federal government, we want to make sure that those who are marginalized, those who are disenfranchised, those who are struggling among us, the working poor, are also being into consideration as it relates to helping some of the challenges that they face. I know sometimes some people think that I'm naive and that maybe I'm too optimistic about what government could do for the people. And that, you know, this councilman, he's calling for free internet, other issues such as canceling rent and mortgages, waiving civil service exam fees for recent high school graduates and veterans, making a decision, asking the mayor to cancel alternative side parking. I get it. And I know that government can't solve everyone's problem. But I do know that we have a role to play to alleviate the burden that many homeowners face, and also renters. And that it's our job as government officials not to solve every problem, but to help individuals help themselves. And that's what I believe the role of government is. Mr. President, there's a recipe for homelessness, and that's what happened when government fails to act. And to my colleagues who have been here, who have ideas as it relates to housing affordability, or even issues, ideas, big ideas. Don't let anyone try to quiet you when you ask questions. Don't let anyone quiet you when you want to put an idea, a solution forward. I know there are some people who have been in this council, in this chamber for a long time, and there are people that many of the times when they have their ideas come up, some of their colleagues might say, well, where are we gonna get this money from? How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna pay for this? It's never been like this. We've never done it before. But one of the things that people need to take in consideration is what happens when you fail to take action? What happens when you don't take care of residents who are on the brink of facing homelessness? What happened to your city when those who are vulnerable amongst us are on the brink of being homeless? You know, over the past couple of weeks, I've seen down in the city where landlords have made a decision to cancel their rents and cancel mortgages. And over the next couple of weeks, I hope we could examine how can we cancel rent for people who live in Albany housing. I'm doing some research on it, and if individuals have some ideas, let's have a discussion. But in crisis, you have to throw the playbook out and think about those that you're fighting for, those that have been marginalized, those who have been working 60+ hours a week and still not able to pay for their rent. I know people that have to make a decision on, if someone has to make a decision between paying for medicine or paying for their rent, they're gonna pay for their medicine. I know individuals who have to make a decision between paying for their rent or buying food. They're going to buy food. And I get it, paying for rent is important, but these are some of the choices that many of our residents face on a daily basis. And I want to make it very clear to those who are facing evictions, those who are struggling, the working poor, you have a voice in the council.
Hey, I'm
You
actually
have a
still
voice in the council, and for
mute.
this
I'm
reason,
still in mute.
I urge my colleagues to support this resolution because housing is a human right. And we as a public servants have an obligation to ensure that all of us are doing what we can to make sure that people are staying in their homes. This is not a time to create mass homelessness. This is not a time to increase evictions. We have to help our tenants. We have to help those who are vulnerable, and we have to help those who are marginalized. Thank you.
Mr. Balarin.
I do want to agree with my colleague. Housing insecurity is a major issue in our city, in our state, especially for our most vulnerable residents. Many people, unfortunately, a full-time job is a 40-hour-week job, and for many people is it's hard to find. And many of us maybe have been able to find them, and I've had it for a long time. But I know a lot of people who've had to piece together a living, and when you piece together your living through different sources of income, it makes it difficult for you to be able to get the documentation that you need to be able to take advantage of the programs that are out there, specifically unemployment and so forth. So, if we have funds, and it looks like we're going to have about $1 million coming in to help our city because of the CARE Act, we should, and I know everyone in this council agrees with that. I was at Caucus, everyone agreed with it. So I know I'm speaking to the cause. But I am proud of the fact that this council agrees with it, because many of our most vulnerable residents are very concerned how they're going to make the rent, how they're going to keep a roof over their head. And it is a serious issue. And for anyone who has had that anxiety in their life, it's something you don't wish on anybody else. And it's something you want to make sure, if you can protect other people from having that anxiety, you can protect other people from having that negative experience, then we should. And I applaud this council for supporting this. And I hope we use as much of our resources from these funds to be able to ease some of those burdens on those residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balarin. And since we're all co-sponsors on this resolution, will do a voice vote on this. So all those in favor?
1 second so we can unmute.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 395120R and ask for its passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Yes, sir. Resolution of the Common Council appointing Jelani McGriff a marriage officer pursuant to Article 3 of the Domestic Relations Law of the State of New York.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, can you please unmute everyone? We're going to do a voice vote on this one as well. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 405120R and ask for its passage.
And we'll do another roll call, voice vote on this one as well. Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Read it.
Aye.
Read it.
Aye.
Oh, yes.
Gotta
Sorry,
read it.
that's so true.
Gotta read it.
My goodness, thank you.
Oh.
Could the clerk please read the resolution?
Yes, President. Resolution of the Common Council appointing Danielle Gillespie a marriage officer pursuant to Article 3 of the Domestic Relations Law of the State of New York.
Is there any discussion on the read resolution? All those in favor, once again?
Aye.
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 No one opposes. Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Did anyone say anything? Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed Resolution 415120R and ask for its passage.
Thank you. And we'll do another voice vote on this one as well. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council appointing Kashana Parker a marriage officer pursuant to Article 3 of the Domestic Relations Law of the State of New York.
Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, resolution passes. Continuing on with resolutions introduced by majority consent, Ms. Dousschate. Oh, sorry, my
I have to
bad.
add them.
Mr. Kimbrough, it is majority consent, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to add by majority consent resolution 425120R and resolution 435120R.
Can we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So both resolutions are added to tonight's agenda. The resolutions introduced, Ms. Dousschate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 42.51.20R for introduction and ask for passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you, Ms. Dousschate. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Yes, Mr. President. A resolution of the Common Council imploring federal, state, and local elected officials and government agencies to take immediate action to ensure the safety and security of the nation's food supply, the equitable distribution of food resources, and the health and safety of all workers throughout the food supply.
That's what we're doing.
Thank you. Discussion on the resolution. Ms. Dousschate, do you want to, because I can't see you, so I'm just.
So in addition to people struggling with not having a job and and there being issues with regard to housing, at least as many people, probably many more, are facing issues of food insecurity in our country and around the world. The World Health Organization, the UN's Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Trade Organization have all warned that the risk of worldwide food shortage if countries fail to manage the coronavirus properly. Food scarcity, food shortages is a known risk of any kind of pandemic. I'm a little surprised that we seem to be caught unawares as a country about that, but we also seem to have been caught unawares about the need for testing and contact tracing as this deadly disease has made its way across the world. The head of the UN Food Agency has warned the world is on the brink of a hunger pandemic. And I personally believe that this could be as bad of a repercussion, potentially worse than the repercussions of the disease itself. So this resolution is calling upon our federal, our president, our Congress, our governor, our state legislature, our county government, and our own mayor to focus on the need to immediately take action to address the concerns raised by food scarcity and the other issues that we are facing with regard to the food supply chain. It is obvious that we have already seen disruptions in the food supply chain as evidenced by the closure of meatpacking companies, the dumping of milk, food going fallow in farmers' fields, because we don't have enough workers in many places to take on these tasks, because people are concerned about their health and safety in taking on these tasks that have now, in some cases, become hazardous. There are miles-long lines for food pantries. We have seen that locally as well as across the nation. And there's also an issue is that there is scarcity of anything, that you wind up seeing an increase, a spike in the prices, which then makes food that is unaffordable or difficult to afford for many people to become even more out of reach. So it's important that we, as a nation, take care of those at greatest risk of these kinds of food insecurity, and make sure that the public assistance programs continue uninterrupted throughout this entire pandemic, and also and beyond, because there will be ongoing repercussions even after we wind up hopefully getting this pandemic under control. We also have an issue with food workers facing the choice of going to work and risking their health and lives, in some cases, risking the health and lives of the people that they then go home to every night, and other people in the community. They do not have the luxury of working from their homes in relative safety. And we have seen the repercussions of that by tens of thousands of workers now being, thousands of workers being infected, and I believe tens of thousands of workers being infected. It's important that we protect our food workers throughout the food supply chain, from the people who are planting the crops and harvesting them, to the people who process them and package them, to the people that then transport them, and even the people on the front lines in our grocery stores, making sure that this gets to people. It's also important that we adopt equitable food distribution policies, and that we not allow corporations that control a lot of the distribution of food to have it only go to the wealthiest communities. And I want to note that also migrant workers are often housed in conditions that do not allow them to follow social distancing recommendations, and that can also lead to significant outbreaks of COVID-19, thereby putting entire communities at risk, not only just the migrant workers. In Singapore, I note, I've been observing this, has seen an 8-fold increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, predominantly related to an outbreak in the migrant community. And in just the last 3 weeks, there has been that 8-fold increase. And finally, officials are noting that it's important that we also not shut down our borders, and that we address some of the disruptions that there have been as a result of some of the nation's actions with regard to shutting down our ports and taking action, and the threat of taking action against other countries. It's important that we have a coordinated approach. So this particular resolution mentions those issues, asks our elected officials to protect the entire food supply chain, ensure that food is put to good use and not left to go fallow in the fields or wasted, being dumped down the drains, or being left in the freezers when it comes to meat. And that food is distributed in a fair and equitable manner. That we also make sure we provide additional funding to the food banks that are unduly stressed by this as they try to take advantage, as they are now beginning to be asked to take advantage of the excess food that farmers have across the country. This also asks that adequate funding be provided to the SNAP program to continue uninterrupted eligibility for that program. and to ensure that all workers in the entire food supply chain are provided with safe working conditions, adequate personal protective equipment, comprehensive health insurance, routine-free testing for COVID, paid sick leave, extra hazard pay, and that the workplace conditions comply with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommendations. And then it also encourages federal agencies to work with countries throughout the world to avert a hunger pandemic by ending the trade disruptions that are contributing to the food scarcity in the United States and around the world. So with that, I ask the support of all of my colleagues. I do believe that everybody has agreed to be a co-sponsor, and that is very much appreciated. And I have asked also at the end of this resolution that this be duly, the signed copy be duly transmitted to all of the key elected officials that are mentioned in this particular resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Any further discussion on this resolution? So since everyone is a co-signer on this, co-sponsor of this resolution, we will do a voice vote on this resolution as well. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Balarin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce resolution number 43-51-20R and read it for passage, please.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council imploring federal elected officials to take immediate action on the proposal for pandemic premium pay to reward, retain, and recruit essential workers as part of the next CARES Act funding bill.
Is there any discussion on the resolution?
Yeah, I got a question.
Mr. Hoey?
Yeah, I just, I noticed when I read through it at the very end where they talk about sending out the letters, I think they meant to say embossed on the thing, but it was some other word, engrossed or something. I think it's just a typo to get fixed.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Can I say anything about it?
Oh, I can't see you. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'll be brief. I want to thank all of my colleagues for supporting this and co-sponsoring this resolution. I think it's important that we make a statement of where we stand. It's one thing to say we stand with the most essential workers. It's another thing to say we believe you deserve hazard pay. And that's what this is about. We are asking these men and women to go out day in and day out and do the job that's allowing us to stay home. Individuals are working in the front lines, working in the hospitals, working in the grocery stores, working in the utility industry, making sure our water flows and our food line still gets delivered. And these individuals deserve more than just our thank you. They deserve hazard pay. It wasn't in the last federal bill, and it should be in the next. If we truly believe that these individuals are the heroes that we say, and they are, then we should be compensating them for their time. We should be compensating them for the risk that they're taking to themselves and to their families. And in some cases, they don't have a choice because these individuals are receiving letters that if they were to leave their jobs, they're not eligible for unemployment. So many people don't have a choice, but they're still showing up and they're still doing their job and they're showing the strength of our nation. And they deserve more than a pat on the back and a thank you. They deserve a hazard pay for their services. And I commend this council for their support of this, and I support our senator for putting this proposal forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Anane.
Oh, God.
I heard that. Thanks a lot. I want to thank the sponsor for this introduction of this resolution. I think essential workers have been the backbone of this pandemic. And when I think about some politicians, there are politicians who give lip service as it relates to who they support, and there are politicians who actually put money behind who they support. And this is a prime example for our federal elected officials to actually think about some of the rhetoric that they're using. Do they really support some of these essential workers? And to take it a step further, why don't they cancel student loans for some of these essential workers? You know, that's some of the things that we all like to see. But again, I want to thank the sponsor of this resolution. And I hope that elected officials, that particularly on the federal level, are paying attention as it relates to this resolution. And hopefully they will do something to show our appreciation instead of giving lip service to our essential workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, can clerk please unmute everyone as well. We'll do a voice vote on this one as well.
Everyone's unmuted.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. Thank you. Now moving on to, I don't think Mr. Burke ever came back, did he, Madam Clerk?
No, we have no participants in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you.
If he does provide written comments, I'll forward it.
Okay. Miscellaneous unfinished business, Mr. Kimbrough.
Yeah, I want to say something too.
Mr. Anane.
I just want to say this, and I know very too often many of us are in a rush and we have different type of schedule. We have a busy schedule that we're all busy. But at the end of the day, this is what we signed up for. And I believe that, very too often, I feel like I'm rushed as relates to when I have a question. Some of my colleagues feel like they're rushed when they have questions. I mean, we're here and it's not even past 8 o'clock. God forbid we go past 10 o'clock during a council meeting. I just want to be clear. I didn't get elected to go along, all right? I didn't get elected to go along to get along. I came here to make a difference, to make a change, to ask questions, okay? So if I have a question or if I have anything that I would like to say, it's on behalf of my constituents. So I just want to make it very clear. And if there's some people that, oh, well, you have a busy schedule or whatever the case may be. Oh, well, this is what you signed up for. God forbid we go past 9 o'clock during a council meeting. Every time we're in a rush, at the end of the day, I know we're in COVID-19 and we're going through a pandemic, but we still have to do the people's work. We still have work to do. And I just want to share my frustration as relates to like being rushed. If there are people that believe that I need to cut my speech down, I'm not. If you want to silence me, keep trying, because you will fail. The reason why I'm here is not because, to come along and just go along with some of the status quo. We're here to make changes. And I get so frustrated sometimes when some of my colleagues have good questions, good views, good suggestions, good motions, and it gets ignored. Where are you in a rush to? Where are we going? I know there's a time and place, but some of us are new to the council and we have questions. We like to answer them. We want them answered. This is the first time that we got a veto message and I want to ask a question and I want to be, and people want to ignore, oh, this is not the time. I'm telling you, just moving forward, like I hope that those people who feel like they have other better things to do and they're busy with their schedule, don't run for re-election. if you don't have time for this, if I want to have a 10-minute speech about housing issues, 20 minutes about public safety issues, oh wow. Oh wow. We're here to have discussions, to have solutions for the real challenge that many of our constituents are going through. This is not to grandstand. This is about finding solutions. And I say this again because it happened more than once, and I've been holding it in. Whether someone has a question, and if you can't answer it, just wait till somebody answer it for them. We are part-time staffers. We're part-time council members. Many of us work full-time because of the district that we represent. And we receive emails, we receive questions, we receive phone calls. The struggle is real. And the residents of the city want answers to some of these issues. And if you don't have time to have a discussion on an important issue that's meaningful to each of us, then you shouldn't be here. And just for point of clarification, sometimes what you think is important to you might not be important to me. And what's important to me might not be important to you. So that's why we have to respect each other's opinions and just move forward. Respect each other's when we have questions to ask. Thank you.
Mr. Hoey?
Yeah, a couple of things. Well, the first thing I want to say, during Councilman Anane's talk and during most of the meeting, I'm hearing phones go off, I'm hearing beeping, I'm hearing noises. And during a regular council meeting in chambers, nobody would be allowed to have their phone on. I mean, I think it's just respect for everybody else. And I think all microphones should be shut off except for those who are not, except for those who are talking. I got a real fast question though, and that's what I really came on for. We were talking earlier about the golf course. Now I got this report from David today. I had trouble opening it, but I did get it open eventually. It says the golf course had $964,000 in revenue. And then during our, earlier in the meeting, we heard it saying that, well, it's a loss. So what's this report? Because it says revenue, 964,000, almost $1 million in revenue. And we're not going to get anything this year because it's going to be closed. So I'm just curious.
Well, there's two sides to that. So there's the revenue side, but there's also the cost side. So the cost side is, depending on the year, either exactly at that $964,000 or often slightly above that. So there is a cost associated to operating the golf course.
Are they going to provide us with that information? Because just reading what he sent me, so I'd be prepared, I guess, I don't see the expenses. All I'm seeing is the revenues. Will they talk about
Well,
that?
if you,
Of this,
go ahead, Jen.
so that you're looking at like a budget situation in terms of actually balancing the budget, which is a different situation. This was them totally focused on the revenue that's impacted by COVID. So the whole purpose of that information that you received was very specific on COVID and on revenue for COVID.
Okay. So
And
what
if you-
you're
and if-
hearing is that 960.
Point of information. We aren't supposed to have this back and forth at this point. I
Miscellaneous.
understand.
Okay.
It's miscellaneous section.
Thank you, Kathy. Kill democracy.
It's miscellaneous, Kathy.
Thank you. What I want to ask is 964,000, and if it's we're losing money on it, is there going to be a lot of people laid off? I mean, how do you not have that?
We'll be discussing that.
That's going to be discussed at the finance meeting in depth, and you can. I would write down all these questions. We can ask them then.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Balarin.
Okay, I'm gonna touch on three topics. Try to keep it brief. One, the franchise committee. I'd like to be on that. I'd like for us to really have a real discussion of how we could increase competition for residents. I think it's ridiculous that our residents pay more for internet through Spectrum than residents in Guilderland. So if you own a home in Guilderland and you get internet from Spectrum, you pay less than if you own a home in Albany and pay internet from Spectrum. That is a fact. So that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. So part of the reason is because there's competition in Guilderland versus Albany when it comes to internet services. And that is a fact. Any of you can test, call with an address in Guilderland and get a price, and you can go with your address in your home. So that's something I'd like to be on that committee, because I think that's something we need to address. And now's the time to do so. Second, JR, I sent you a voicemail. Hopefully we can work together on a letter I'd like to draft and present to the council. A letter kind of piggybacks what we spoke about today about essential workers. But this deals with debt benefits for essential workers' families, for people who have, it is so that we don't leave their family. It's going to be a call for the federal, state, and local governments to look at those who have gave the ultimate price in this war, because this is what it is. We've lost more people to this virus than we did in the Vietnam War. So the letter will be calling for a 9/11 style debt benefit package for the family survivors. Because you heard about it, you read about it. We've lost doctors, we've lost nurses, we've lost police officers, we've lost bus drivers, it's countless. And what happens to their families? What do they get? So that letter is going to be drafted, and I hope for your support. And that's going to be going to our federal leaders, our state leaders, and our local leaders, because luckily we haven't had anyone. We haven't lost anyone that I know of in this city, but I know we've had many of our staff that have gotten sick, our workers in the water department, our police officers, our firefighters, and what would have happened if they would have paid the ultimate price. So I want to make sure that we have something in writing, and we work to make sure we protect those families in the future. The last point, and I'll be brief on this, I do think when we look at these difficult decisions that we need to make, we should be looking at it in the most equitable way to do so, and to do the least harm. It's going to be very difficult. I understand. I'm not saying this. We're going through a difficult time, especially if we don't get the help. If we don't get our support from our federal government. But I don't think we should be starting with our lower income earners. I think we should go from the top 10% of income earners, and start there. Where can we go from there? Where can we start from there? What can they give? What are they willing to give? And then work our way down. That's my suggestion. I am with the mayor, I am with my council members in this fight to make sure, I'm with my state representatives and my governor in this fight to make sure we get our fair share from the federal government. I am with you all. And I know we have a lot of debates and we have a lot of discussions, but I know we're all united on that. So thank you all for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Okay, I wanted to follow up on what Owusu said, because in most ways I agree with him. Awusu and I did have discussions about, the override, and my belief is that we could have chose to vote on it tonight. However, in discussions with leadership and with council, the agreement was that we would wait until the 18th. But I still think that Awusu's question was a good question. And I did also want to also raise a question too, because by waiting until the 18th to vote, I am assuming that the governor will extend the electronic media order that he has, because technically it's going to expire before the 18th. So I really don't think we're at risk of having an invalid meeting on the 18th. And I think a caucus to discuss it is very worthwhile. So, but I appreciate Lucy's point and raising that question, because we could have decided to vote on it, I believe, tonight, but we didn't. We just decided, at least in the discussions that I'm aware of, decided to wait until the 18th. And that's all I had to say.
Mr. Conti?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Actually, my thought was back on the golf course issue again. I just want to note on the golf course, and something that it's an issue that's been raised in the past, but I don't know if it's been done. When we talk about revenues and expenditures there, we have to understand that we don't really allocate costs. So for a substantial part of the season, that golf course is actually a park, yet we still treat it as an expense. And I think we need to understand that also during their parts of the year, when golf course employees might be moved to other functions outside of the course, or to deal with snow emergency issues or things like that, that's still considered a cost to the golf course. So we really do need a cost allocation system if we want to consider what the actual revenues and costs are as far as how the golf course operates. But it's just an observation, and I don't know if that's something the Finance Committee can delve into. It has been brought up in budget in the past, but there's never really been an adequate answer on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ms. Dousschate, did I see your hand up? I thought I did.
No.
No?
Oh, all right.
Okay.
I'm unmuted, right? So these are extremely terrifying and tough times for everybody. As we look at making decisions, I believe Ms. Farrell said that the city is talking about an $18 million shortfall. Did I get that right? If that's correct, if we don't come up with cuts and we don't get something close to that in federal aid, or if we don't get any additional federal aid or state assistance, and we indeed have to make we have to come up with the difference of $18 million. That is a 32.5% property tax increase. So that's the balance that we need to be looking at. We need to figure out how to preserve essential city services. There are programs for when people are unemployed, and that needs to be considered. And the potential for a 32% real property tax increase also needs to be considered. I would find that untenable myself, and I think that we're going to be facing a lot of untenable decisions almost regardless, because nobody is being made whole by these federal provisions, except with maybe the exception of some very big corporations. I don't know. So that's just a sad reality that as we are looking towards having further discussions about that, I just wanted to provide people with that little bit of math that I just did, taking out our budget for 2020 and looking at that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Joe, did I see your hand, Joe? Mr. Igo?
Igo's muted.
Can JR unmute him?
We can unmute, but he has to say yes to the host
Can you
unmute.
hear me now?
Yeah, he's unmuted
We can
now.
hear you, Joe.
Okay. One thing, I saw a report on the news tonight, and I hate seeing things on the news before we hear it, but there was a report come out from someone that the administration hired to look at the dispatchers. I'd like to get some information on that instead of on the television. And I'd like to thank Richard today for some information that he got. We were very concerned about last year. There was arrests made and 6 dirt bikes confiscated, which I think is a good thing. And but that's it. But I'd like to see that report, and I'd like to stay on top of things, not seeing them on the television. It's not our fault, but just for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Johnson has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I represent a ward that was facing homelessness, rent problems, joblessness, and crime before this pandemic. And sometimes, to the councilman's point about feeling rushed, it's been many times I felt rushed since I've been on the council. And I just say, what do we expect when we put little time to issues that matter to the inner city? Whenever it comes time for us to speak about issues to the inner city, it just seems like we don't have enough time. And so, sometimes it's painful for me when we get in front of the camera, when we get in front of people, it seems like things become important. And I just think that, I see swift action when things happen in other people's neighborhoods. And I think that, this is Smallbany, New York. We all are aware of what's going on in each other's wards. To say, to go along, to get along, I see a lot of going along to get along when it comes time to day-to-day issues that inner city families are facing. And we shouldn't just, it shouldn't become a problem when somebody gets murdered or, when somebody important's family member gets violated. I think that until we really start identifying and addressing issues equally, we talk about the equity, we passed the equity bill, but we have really seen few fruits from it. And so I just say that it's really important that all issues in this city be addressed and, people be given equal consideration for things that are important in their wards, because that's why the morale of the local voters are so low, because they don't really see, and especially in the lower wards, they don't really see action, and they don't see action that they can make a connection with. So, until we start, really addressing the things that have been going on for so long, it's going to be hard for us to move and be an effective group that's going to represent the whole city. So, I just think that we need to have a conversation about the hiring that's going on, because although we're getting ready to go into recession where job cuts are coming, we have people that have been constantly overlooked for promotions for generations. And, I would like to see more time spent on issues of wards that just don't get that type of consideration. And so I just wanted to add that for the record tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. See another Mr. Kimbrough.
Oh yeah, the report that Okay, good. I'll wait.
I'm out. So, this is a question, I guess, for the finance committee. I just want to get out there before I forget about it. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hard to understand you.
It's distorted.
It's distorted. It's on his end. It's not on our end.
Okay, can you hear me now? Better.
No.
Okay, let's forget
Can
that.
you mute everybody and just leave him and see if that works? If you mute everybody else and just leave him? Sometimes.
What about it?
Jamel, will you email it?
Yeah, I'll email the question.
Okay, bro. So yeah. So the report that Joe referred to, we knew it was being done, but we didn't get the results. I don't know why, but we'll look into that. But we spoke about that in leadership meetings. There's that, and I would urge all members to, if you can, participate in that finance meeting. These are, there's some real tough decisions that have to be made, and we want as much information as we can have in making those decisions. And I think it's important that we all understand what's being done and why it's being done. And the way to do that is to be a part of that conversation. So if you can make it, I think you really ought to attend the finance meeting. Anyone else?
Kimbrough? I don't think so. I don't see any.
Okay. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Second? To a second?
Mr. Johnson looks like he's.
I thought Jamel was texting Danielle a question so he could ask.
No, I think he's sending in his comments by email, so that will come out to the members.
Yeah, I'm sending
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Working now.
Well, we can hear you now, clearly. Why don't you try?
Well,
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. No, this is a question, I guess, that we can bring up in the finance committee. I just wanted to bring it up before I actually forgot it. Have we realized any cost savings from the streetlight purchases just yet? And how can we factor that into making it so that we don't have to experience, job losses for city employees? If we can see if that can be factored in somehow. I guess that's a question for the budget director. But
Yeah, and I think briefly, the cost savings is in our energy cost mostly. And that is part of, so there's factored into the upcoming budget. It's not something that we'd be going in saving more money than was budgeted. But it's something we should definitely bring up, and I think that or anything if we're getting cost savings from anything right now, how to best make sure that's utilized. Go ahead, Judy. I knew Judy would have more input.
Well, I just want to note that energy costs are down, so there should be, in addition to the savings from the streetlights generally in that conversion, we may see a little bit more savings as a result of reduction in electricity costs, because the fuels that power the electric generators should be less. There's also heat in our buildings. There should be lower energy costs associated with that. And not only now, you may not see so much of it for the current season, but that may be something we will be seeing a little bit more as we move forward. That would be one small bright spot.
Thank you, Judy. Mr. Kimbrough.
Before you, can I just quick question?
Oh.
No, just piggybacking on
Go ahead.
when you have when we do have the finance meeting, because we're focused right now on reduction in revenues, but and I don't know to what extent they have looked at reduction in expenditures that we might be experiencing. If that's something that can also be discussed or part of the agenda when the finance committee meets, and if they can be given a heads up, that's a question we have.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.